So you want to sell your designs on print-on-demand products like t-shirts, mugs, sweatshirts, and tote bags, but you're not quite sure which online sales channel is the right one to start with. In this video, I'm going to break down the key differences between the three main categories of online sales channels for print-on-demand products. Before we jump in, I want to mention that I'm assuming you're familiar with print-on-demand in general, and you're just trying to decide which online sales channel you want to get started in. If you're not familiar with print-on-demand at all, then I have some resources for you down in the description for you to take a look at and become more familiar in general with the print-on-demand business model and how it works. Over the last several years, the print-on-demand business model has exploded in the online retail business landscape. And there are three main categories of online sales channels for print-on-demand products. And there are some variations here. Some of the sales channels do kind of cross over and combine characteristics. But in general, there are three categories. There are the artist or contributor marketplaces. There are independent seller marketplaces. And then there is selling through your own website. And each of them has advantages, disadvantages, and just differences between them. I am not here to tell you that one of these is better than the other or that one of these is the way that you should go. I'm just going to break down some of the key differences between them to hopefully help you better understand the differences and make your decisions about which sales channels you want to sell in. And you can choose to sell in one or all of these sales channels. We're going to break down the differences for these three sales channels in 7 different categories. We're going to talk about the startup cost, the monthly cost, barriers to entry or ease of entry, competition, customer base or traffic, the level of control you have as a seller, and we're going to do a very simple comparison of the fees that you will be charged on a $20 sale. But before we get into those specific categories, let's just define what those three sales channels are a little bit more. First up, the artist or contributor marketplaces are platforms like Redbubble, Amazon Merch on Demand, and TeePublic. And there are several others out there as well. Now, I'm including Amazon Merch on Demand in this category because it has more similarities to these other sites than it does the independent seller marketplace, but that one does have a few things that cross over between the two. These platforms allow you to get started very, very easily and very quickly. Basically, you just create an account and you can start uploading your designs onto products. And these sites handle all of the transaction and customer service side of the business. So you are just uploading your designs. You do have some control over the prices that you charge for your products, but when they sell, you get a commission or a royalty for the sale instead of getting the revenue and then having to pay for the order fulfillment. The platform handles the fulfillment of the order, the customer service, and everything else about the business. Independent seller marketplaces include sites like Etsy and eBay, as well as Amazon Seller Central and even Walmart. These platforms allow you to open your own storefront and have a little bit more control over the branding and product selection that you offer, but you are still part of an existing marketplace and you are responsible for order fulfillment as well as customer service. And the barriers to entry and the cost is going to be a step up from the artist or contributor marketplaces. They're going to either charge you a monthly fee or a transaction fee or both. So these independent seller marketplaces are taking one step closer to you having more control over the business and more responsibility for running the business. And lastly, we have selling through your own online store and your own website. So this includes having your own domain name and most commonly using a seller platform like Shopify to actually build your site and your online store and process payments and things like that. Selling through this channel gives you the most control over all aspects of running the business. However, there is no built-in customer base like there is with the other two sales channels. The setup process does take a little bit more time, and of course, selling through your own site is going to come with some expenses as well. All right, so that's a general introduction to the three main categories. Now let's dissect them a little bit further and go into 7 different categories. We're going to start with startup cost here, and I just want to throw out a disclaimer. I'm not including the cost of optional tools and resources in this. I'm just going to be considering the startup cost, the bare minimum you need to get started. Optional tools and resources would include things like paid commercial graphics services to improve the quality of your graphics, because those types of things you can use across any of these sales channels. Starting with the artist contributor marketplaces like Amazon Merch on Demand and Redbubble, we have a 0 startup cost. There is absolutely no cost to creating an account and starting to upload your designs on products. Now, I could have included the startup cost in the barriers to entry category that we'll get to in just a few moments, because the cost to starting your business certainly can present a barrier. But in this case, I'm separating that category out, and these marketplaces do not cost anything for you to get started. Moving into the independent seller marketplaces, the startup cost has a range from very low to what I would call moderate. For example, selling on Etsy does not cost anything upfront in terms of fees or memberships or anything like that. Anybody can create an Etsy account and open their shop and start uploading products. However, Etsy does charge a 20-cent listing fee for each product that you list in your shop. So every time you add a new product to your shop and every time you sell a product, you pay a 20-cent listing fee. So if you open your Etsy shop and you immediately create 100 products, that will cost you $20 before you make any sales. Now, Amazon Seller Central is also an independent seller marketplace, and there are two types of accounts that you can go for there, one of which is the individual plan, which does not have a monthly cost, but it does have a per product cost, so when you make a sale, you pay a fee. But Amazon recommends that if you're going to be making more than 40 sales per month, you go for the Pro Amazon Seller Central account, which costs $39 per month. And that $39 per month is something you pay whether you make any sales or not. Now, moving on to selling on your own website, there are a couple different startup costs to consider here. And we're going to keep things fairly simple for this video. I'm going to focus on what has become one of the more popular platforms for starting an online store, and that is Shopify. Shopify does not have any upfront one-time fees to create an account and get started building your online store, but you do have to sign up for a subscription. However, you will also need to buy a domain name for your website so that customers know where to find you, and the Shopify basic subscription does not include a domain name. You can buy a domain name through Shopify or through a third-party service and then connect it to your Shopify account. And the cost of registering your domain name is going to vary broadly depending on what the actual name is and what the domain actually is, .com, .net, that kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons why the startup costs can have a pretty broad range for starting your own site, because you're not just paying for a monthly fee for a service like Shopify to build your store, you're also having to pay for your domain name. Now, the Shopify basic plan does include a lot of things that you might pay extra for if you were just building a website that was not an online store. Things like an SSL certificate is included in the plan. So the Shopify basic plan is a pretty good value in that regard. All right, moving along to the monthly cost for each of these sales channels, you're going to see a similar trend here. The artist contributor category is going to have a $0 monthly fee. They start free and they stay free. Independent seller marketplaces are going to have a range depending on which one you participate in. Etsy does not have a required monthly fee just to have a seller account. They do have an Etsy Plus seller account, which costs $10 a month and comes with a few benefits, but it's not required. Amazon, as I mentioned, requires you to have either an individual or a Pro Amazon Seller Central account. And assuming that you're making over 40 sales per month, you're going to have the Pro account, which costs $39. So regardless of how your sales volume fluctuates from month to month, you are paying that $39. And selling through your own site, if we stick to Shopify as our example, the basic plan has that $29 per month cost. If your business does scale up to the point where the regular Shopify account becomes relevant, that has a $79 per month cost. Now, the monthly cost for other selling platforms online could vary greatly. Remember, I'm just using Shopify as the example for that category. All right, moving along into the barriers to entry or the ease of entry category. For the artist contributor marketplace sales channel, we have a little bit of variance between the different platforms. Redbubble, TeePublic, and some additional ones like Spreadshirt all have a very similar sign up and getting started process. You can create an account and be uploading designs onto products in as little as 10 or 15 minutes. Amazon Merch on Demand is the standout here that's different than the rest. It is a completely free program and has a lot of things in common with Redbubble and TeePublic and Spreadshirt, but the sign-up process is different. It is open to anyone, but you have to apply. So you have to request an Amazon Merch on Demand seller account, and it could take anywhere from a week or two to a couple of months before you hear back as to whether you're going to be let into the program. And you can reapply if you don't get into the program at first. So that program is an exception here, but in general, the barriers to entry is very, very low. So this is one of the reasons why lots and lots of designers and sellers choose to use these channels, because you can get up and running in a very, very little amount of time with very little effort. Pretty much as much effort as it takes you to create an account, you can be up and running. Moving on to the independent seller marketplaces like Etsy, it's going to take a step up in terms of the barriers to entry, but it's still going to be relatively easy. So I'm calling this sales channel an easy to moderate barriers to entry, or ease of entry. I actually have a couple of videos that walk you through A to Z, every step of the process to open an Etsy shop. So check those out if you're interested after this video. The Amazon Seller Central account creation process is also going to take you a few more steps than it takes to create an Amazon Merch on Demand account. And in this barriers to entry or ease of entry, I'm also kind of lumping in how easy is it to get your shop up and running with products listed, not just creating the account. And this is where there's some more differentiation between the artist contributor marketplaces and independent seller marketplaces. Because with the independent seller marketplaces, you have full control over what products you list and all of the details for each listing, compared to just uploading your design on some predetermined products in the artist contributor marketplaces. The listing process for your products is more involved for the independent seller marketplaces. So with more control comes more effort and responsibility. And lastly, selling through your own site, I'm going to call moderate to difficult. Now keep in mind, I am ranking these in terms of barriers to entry or ease of entry against each other, not in terms of generally whether they're difficult or not. So when I compare the process of starting your own website and online store to creating a Redbubble account, I basically have to rank the starting your own store as difficult, because there is just so much more involved compared to starting a Redbubble account. But that doesn't mean that in general it is difficult to open a Shopify store, for example, especially if you have experience and background starting your own websites in the past. You may find it to be fairly easy. Shopify certainly makes it about as easy as it can be to get started. But there are going to naturally be some more decisions that you need to make versus opening a shop in an existing marketplace. Even things like registering your own domain name, all of those things are going to add some effort required on the front end. And so naturally, that means the barrier to entry is a little bit higher. One thing that's also worth mentioning about the independent seller and the selling through your own site sales channels is that the structure of your business also comes into play there. Generally speaking, when you're signing up for a Redbubble account or an Amazon Merch on Demand, there's no issue with simply representing yourself as an individual person. But once you get into selling through the independent seller marketplaces as well as selling on your own site, then you start getting into topics like sales tax, revenue and expenses, and the possibility of registering for a formal business entity like an LLC. Now, you certainly can proceed as a sole proprietor without formalizing a legal business entity, but there are more business complexities at play for those two sales channels because you are effectively running a business. Whereas on the artist contributor marketplaces, you might be running a business, but you also could just be an individual artist who's uploading your designs, and because you're not handling any of the sales tax collection, order fulfillment, shipping, or management of revenue and expenses, those complications are just things you don't need to figure out. And so that also weighs into why the independent seller marketplace and selling through your own website have more of that moderate to difficult range when it comes to getting started. Next up, let's talk about competition. For the artist contributor marketplaces, I'm going to go ahead and just say there is tons of competition. And by this point, you probably know why there is tons of competition on those marketplaces. It's because the barriers to entry is virtually zero and they are completely free to get started. And because it's so easy for anybody to get started selling on those marketplaces, lots and lots of people do it. Now, that does not mean that you cannot make money selling through those channels. I personally still upload my designs to some of those marketplaces. And because they have very low barriers to entry and don't cost anything to get started, they can be a great place for you to introduce yourself to the world of print on demand, creating designs and things like that. When it comes to the independent seller marketplaces, you're also going to have lots of competition, because it's still relatively easy to get your business started on sites like Etsy or even Amazon Seller Central. So the competition is still going to be pretty fierce on these platforms. Now, selling through your own site or online store, you might think that you're getting away from all of that competition. I've even seen some advice that flat out indicates that you shouldn't sell on Etsy because there's too much competition, and so you should sell on your own website. And I'm not going to go into a full-on rant about that, but the one thing I want to point out is that when you sell on your own website, depending on what your niche is or your brand, what types of products you sell, what types of designs you sell, you may not have other sellers on your website competing for sales, but you are competing against everybody else out there who has a similar online store. So really the only difference is where you're competing with other sellers. So in that sales channel, it does become a little bit more important for you to build a returning customer base, people that want to come back and make repeat purchases from your shop. All right, so if you couldn't tell, my opinion there is there's no escaping competition. It's certainly true that there are going to be more sellers on platforms where it is free and easy to join. However, there is no sales channel where you are completely escaping all competition. All right, moving on to the customer base or the existing traffic. Both the artist contributor marketplaces and independent seller marketplaces supply their own customer base and their own traffic. One of the biggest appeals to both of those sales channels is that you don't have to supply the traffic or the shoppers. You list your products for sale, whether that be on Redbubble, on Etsy, or on Amazon, and the millions of online shoppers that visit those sites every month have a chance at seeing your products. Now, of course, there are some key things you need to do well in order to get your products seen by customers. And that includes doing your keyword research and putting things in your title and your tags of your listings that actually match up with what people are searching for. But there is a built-in level of traffic that comes through that sales channel every single month. However, you can and should still be driving your own traffic to your products and listings. So you absolutely should do things like promote your products on Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, but that's not going to be the only traffic that your products get because you're selling on a platform that already is bringing in millions of shoppers every month. Now, this is not going to be the case if you sell through your own online store. When you first register your domain name and create your online store, you are the only person who knows that that store exists. And it's completely up to you to drive online traffic to your store. So that means engaging with shoppers on social media, as well as running things like paid Google ads or Facebook ads becomes extremely important and a key part of your marketing, because you simply won't make sales if people are not aware of your store. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that it is impossible. There are plenty of successful online businesses out there that started their site from scratch. However, it is a big difference between the other two channels, so it's important to be aware of. All right, let's talk about the level of control you have over your business. Now, I've mentioned some of these details already, but let's just put a little bit of a finer point on it. When you sell in the artist contributor marketplaces, you have very little control overall over your business. And that quite simply is because you're not that involved in the business. These marketplaces have a predetermined set of products that you can upload your designs to. You cannot freely choose any product you want to sell on the platform. And this could be a relatively small set of products like on Amazon Merch on Demand, or it could be a pretty broad range of products like on Redbubble and Spreadshirt. You do have control over which products you want to upload each design onto, but you're limited to all of the products that are in their catalog. You also have less control over the pricing of the products, and you don't have any control over the cost of the product. So there's a fixed cost, and then you can set your price or your commission percentage. But because there is no alternative supplier you can go to get a lower cost, when you lower your price, you are reducing your commission. So in these marketplaces, if you are trying to compete on price, for example, if t-shirts from other sellers are commonly listed at $18.99 and you want to list your t-shirts for $17.99 to try and undercut them on price, you're just going to accept a lower commission per sale because you don't have the opportunity to go find a different supplier with a lower cost. You also don't have nearly as much control over the branding and the general image of your storefront. And these marketplaces also have their own built-in mock-up images that you don't have control over, so you can't upload your own mock-ups to differentiate your listings at all. However, with less control comes less responsibility because you also don't have to interact directly with customers on any of these marketplaces. Now, in independent seller marketplaces like Etsy or Amazon Seller Central, you're going to get more control. It's not going to be full control over every aspect of your business, but it's going to be considerably more control than on the artist contributor marketplaces. For example, on Etsy, although your listing format or the layout of your listings is going to look the same as every other seller, you can upload any 10 images to each of your listings so you can have your own product mockups, your own branding, and your storefront also has several options to make it look like it is branded for your business. With these marketplaces, you also have full control over what products you list for sale and who handles order fulfillment. So with print on demand, we're talking about platforms like Printful, Printify, and Gelato. You can choose to partner with one or multiple of these print-on-demand platforms to fulfill your orders. You can select which products from each of the platforms you want to offer in your shop. You can switch providers at any time if one of them is offering a lower price than the one you're using, and you set your retail and your shipping prices directly for your customers. So this sales channel gives you a lot more control over what your profit per sale is going to be. However, with more control comes more responsibility because on these marketplaces, you are responsible not only for the order fulfillment, but also for interacting directly with customers. You're going to have to answer customer questions as well as handle customer complaints, possibly getting bad reviews, requests for returns or refunds, and everything that comes with customer service. You also still have to abide by the marketplace policies. For example, if one of these marketplaces requires you to accept returns for a certain amount of time, you don't have a choice. You have to abide by that policy because you're a seller in the marketplace. So this sales channel doesn't quite give you full control over every aspect of your business, but there is a lot more control than in the artist contributor marketplaces. Now, selling through your own online store, you're going to have just about as much control as you can possibly have. When you use a service like Shopify to open your online store, there will always be at least a few limitations on things that you can or cannot do in your online store. But as far as product selection, pricing, suppliers that you work with, policies for your shop, you have full control over all of that. And just in general, you have the most control over all of the aspects of your business when you sell on your own site. Now, you still have to follow rules that apply to every seller out there, no matter what channel you're in. That would be things like trademark and copyright laws. So there is no escape to following those types of rules. Now, one last thing I want to call out that differs across these sales channels are the fees that you're charged when you make a sale. And when we're talking about which sales channel is the best one to use for print-on-demand products, one question that gets thrown out there a lot is, which one can I make the most money on? Well, of course, the answer to that is not quite as simple as the question itself. You can absolutely make money in any of these sales channels. I'm not here to suggest that you can make millions of dollars off of one but not another, because the truth is print on demand is no different than any other business. When it comes to how much money your business ultimately makes, it's going to be determined by a variety of factors, not the least of which is how much effort you put into it. So it's really important for you to recognize that no matter which of these sales channels you ultimately choose to sell in, you are the biggest determining factor when it comes to how successful your business is going to be. All right, with all of that said, let's do one last quick comparison here to demonstrate the difference in potential profit per order, that's a lot of P's, between these three sales channels. Now, there are several factors that determine profit per order here, but I just wanted to illustrate the difference between these sales channels and the fees they charge per transaction. All right, your artist contributor marketplaces are pretty simple. There are 0 fees per transaction. So if you sold a t-shirt for $20, then you're going to get whatever the commission rate is for that product. And that's based on the fixed cost that the marketplace has determined. When it comes to independent seller marketplaces, if we just compare Etsy and Amazon Seller Central here, the Etsy fees on a sale of $20 even with 0 charge for shipping is going to be $2.35. And the Amazon seller fees for an item in the clothing category is going to be $3.80. And again, that's with a $0 shipping charge and the pro seller account. And if you were to sell that t-shirt for $20 through Shopify in your own online store, there is no transaction fee, but there is a payment processing fee of 87 cents, and that is with Shopify payments. There is an additional 2% payment processing charge if you were to use PayPal instead of Shopify payments, but assuming you only go through Shopify payments, it would only be 87 cents. So ultimately, your profit on selling a t-shirt for $20 is going to vary across these three channels, but I just wanted to illustrate the difference in the transaction and payment processing fees across them. All right, so that wraps up our comparison of the three main sales channels for print-on-demand products. I hope this information has helped you make a decision about which of these sales channels might be right for you. On the POD Insights channel, I focus most of my videos on the Etsy marketplace, so if you're interested in that marketplace, then definitely hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified when I come out with additional videos, and check out the links in the description and at the end of this video for some great content about selling on Etsy. Do me a favor and hit that like button if you found this video helpful so that YouTube can show it to more people. Thank you for watching, and special thank you to all subscribers out there. I really appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.